One, Israel is an apartheid state. And number two, that Israel is executing a genocide in Gaza. And there is actually huge resistance to those two facts inside of the United States. There are a lot of people who want to speak out. And this is what you get with this advertisement that the New York Times rejected. What the New York Times was very upset about was that the word genocide was used in the advertisement. The New York Times said you can't use the word genocide. You want to think about that. This is a country where we're talking about Israel, where there's all sorts of evidence that it's committing a genocide. And you have an organization that wants to put an ad in the New York Times that uses the word genocide, and the Times says no. Now, you want to ask yourself, what's going on here? The problem is that Israel is under siege here in the United States in certain quarters, and more people are talking out about apartheid and genocide. And the Israel lobby is going to enormous lengths to put pressure on policymakers and on journalists and on university presidents to suppress that speech. They don't want people talking about genocide and apartheid.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we have a very important interview between Judge Andrew Napolitano and Professor John Mearsheimer on the important issue of is Israel overextending itself. Of course, we know the answer to that question is yes, without a shadow of a doubt, but these conversations need to be had. And Professor John Mearsheimer wastes no time discussing how the US is silencing people in using the word genocide. It's funny really because the First Amendment protects these rights, but it looks like things are changing and changing fast.
Were you surprised that Mike Waltz did this, or is the mentality the same? No matter who runs the government, one team has D after their names and the other has R.
Of course, and that's because the lobby is so powerful. I mean, there's no difference between the Democrats and the Republicans on this issue. As I said the last time I was on the show, people have been saying that from a hardliner's point of view inside of Israel, they're really thankful that Trump is replacing Biden because Biden wasn't supportive enough of Israel. This is a laughable argument. Biden was fully supportive of Israel. He backed him at every turn. How can Trump be any different? The Trump administration, and this of course includes people like Michael Waltz, and the Biden administration will act the same way towards Israel. They have no choice. They would pay a god-awful price if they challenged Israel in any meaningful way, because again, the lobby is so powerful.
Two things which really stood out to me: they have no choice and they would face an awful price if they challenged Israel in any meaningful way. I've said this before, but when Netanyahu visited Trump in the White House, clearly Netanyahu was a superior one. His body language and his speech just overpowered Trump. I don't like Netanyahu, but I have to say clearly this was a difference in power.
Israel has committed genocide in Gaza, destroyed 90 to 95% of it, neutralized for a while Hezbollah, seized 40% of the land area of Syria, and is now claiming it is part of Israel. Is it overextending itself?
Well, I think there's not much question it's overextending itself. Just to take Gaza, for example, you want to remember that the Israelis were in Gaza until 2005, and they got out. And they got out because they were overextended. It was just too demanding to stay in Gaza and manage it. And instead, what they did was turn it into an open-air prison. They're now in Gaza. There's no evidence they're going to leave. And furthermore, they're now in southern Lebanon. And as best I can tell, they're not going to leave southern Lebanon. They're now in Syria. And as best I can tell, they're not going to leave Syria. And you want to ask yourself, just to take the Syrian case, what's going to happen in Syria? Do you think the new Syrian government, do you think the Turks are going to be happy about Israel occupying a large slice of Syria? And they're just going to accept it? I wouldn't bet a lot of money on that. And I wouldn't bet a lot of money that Hezbollah doesn't come back into the fight if Israel doesn't leave southern Lebanon. And you can rest assured, going to Gaza, that Hamas is still alive and well. The Israelis now acknowledge that, and that Hamas will retaliate and do everything it can to drive the Israelis out. So they have a lot of problems facing them.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. Why is Israel on the ground in other countries? Why? Why are they there? This is trespass and invasion. Clear violation of international law. Then the question why other militant groups exist. Of course, militant groups exist if you're going into their countries and slowly expanding your settlements. It makes no sense, and they also have the right to defend themselves against Israel for invading their country.
I know you are an academic and your expertise is geopolitics. You're not a shrink, but I want you to watch the body language on the following clip, cut number 6.
Do you, Secretary Blinken, worry that perhaps you have been presiding over what the world will see as a genocide?
No, it's not, first of all. Second, as to how the world sees it, I can't fully answer to that. But everyone has to look at the facts and draw their own conclusions from those facts. And my conclusions are clear.
Pitiful.
Yeah. It's like the earlier clip you played about Ukraine. You remember he was saying that we basically have prevailed in Ukraine.
Right.
We left Ukraine in great shape. You just sort of say to yourself, what planet is this guy living on? And the same thing is true with regard to what's happening in Gaza. I would say to him, okay, you don't want to call it a genocide. What do you call it? Mass murder?
Right.
You believe the Israelis are creating massive war crimes? General Yalon, Boogie Yalon.
Our friend and colleague Max Blumenthal was quite critical of the reporter from the New York Times, whose name is escaping me, for not following up much along the lines that you just suggested. This clip makes Tony Blinken look terrible, or he himself makes himself look terrible, but she could have followed up along the lines that you just articulated.
Anthony Blinken is one of those shameless people acting like the tough guy. We know he's not. Put him in the ring with a toddler and he'll lose. These are the people the world doesn't need, and definitely not in government. Judge states it as pitiful. Seems like someone else is holding his leash, and sad to see that these people are going to get away with this scot-free. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Support me by liking and subscribing. I'll see you on my next video. Peace out.